Hey there, Chad here. This is episode 2 of my Complete Beginner's Guide to Pro Cycling Manager 23. In the previous episode, we created a new rider and talked about a few things like attributes and domains. And in this episode, we're going to go ahead and advance to the first race. And we're going to learn a little bit about how to control the bike, some of the keyboard controls that we can use, maybe learn a little bit about how the races work, and we'll actually go through the actual race. Game time today is January 3rd, and we have a race coming up, the Cyanide Cup, the first one, in 6 days. If we look at the profile for that race, it is a very flat race, and we're going to go ahead and advance to that. We're just going to click continue. Now these first few days go by very quickly. We're already up to the 8th, now the 9th, the day of the race, because there are no other races going on. When the game has to process races, it will take a little longer. So the screen we see here gives us some information about the race. This is our team. The selected racers are the ones with check marks next to them. This is my rider, and these are my attributes. Now right now, I don't know anything about most of my teammates. I got a little bit of a sense on Funte here, on what his abilities are, and on Fernandez here. I get basically pie wedges that give me, kind of a percentage of their ability. Over time, I will get more information on other riders as I ride with them, and eventually I'll even get numbers in here. We can go ahead and look at the race briefing. This gives us a rundown of the race and who's actually in it. It shows us our freshness. And then there's this thing called RDC. The expected race day condition tells us what we are expecting our rider to experience on race day. Right now, all of our riders are expected to be a -1. This can range from anywhere from -3 to +3. So we would prefer pluses as opposed to minuses. Unfortunately, our whole team is apparently suffering from some jet lag or something like that, and we're not going to be performing terribly well. This may change a little bit by the time we actually get in the game, but generally this gives you a very good rule of thumb. If you float over this, it gives you a little bit of information about what is causing your value, and basically it's the weather today. It looks like it's a relatively cool day. Okay, and then we get just a little glimpse into the race. This is a little bit fun. There's an interview with one of the riders. Every once in a while, this will be you. And I like it when that happens. Once you're a little bit further up the echelon of riders, they'll want to talk to you once in a while. And it asks you, what do you think you're going to do and who's your toughest competition? And then there's also the focus on, or this says zoom on. The editor says who they think is going to win this particular race or who's going to perform well. And then, of course, there's a list of favorites. It is fun when you start seeing your name in this list, and it's more fun when it's closer to the top of the list. From here, you can do a quick simulation where there's no involvement from you in running the game, or we do the 3D race. We're going to go ahead and do the 3D race. While we're waiting for this to load, I do want to say that if you're interested in something more than just a complete beginner's guide, I would recommend going over to Decathlon Gamer's channel to see. He's been doing this for many years. He's been a great help to me in getting started with all of this, and he's been very helpful just in general. I really appreciated the chances I've had to interact with him, and his channel is great to check out. You can search for Decathlon Gamer and PCM, and you'll find tons and tons of content from him. Okay, so I went ahead and paused the race here as we started up. I want to show you how this kind of works. I have turned the commentator off. There's a commentator voice that will talk to us and give us some information. He usually says, oh, it's going to be a rainy day today is what we're seeing here, or, nothing but sun today, things like this. He can get a little annoying over time, and he will talk to you during the race as well. I've gone ahead and turned that off, mostly so it doesn't distract me while I'm trying to do some of these videos. I might kind of bump that up a little bit in the future, though. There is a setting that allows you to pause the race before it actually starts on you. What that will do is pop up a black box in the middle of the screen that says pause, okay, and you'll click that and then it'll continue on. I've decided not to do that. I usually pause the race right before I start, look at a couple of settings. We're going to do that here real quick. So the race strategy basically spells out to us what our team director is wanting us to do. And in this particular race, which is our first ever, we're in the service of the leaders of the team. We are not considered a leader. No team is worth its while without loyal teammates. Our particular objective in this race is to work at the head of a group for 15 kilometers with at least one teammate in the group. So that can be the peloton, it can be a breakaway, it can be a trail group. It also shows us who else is riding with us and what their role is. Okay, so as of right now, there's 6 of us total. It looks like Funte is considered the the team favorite. And again, I apologize for butchering these names. We will probably get some call outs from him asking us to come back and help him. And here's something that's very important to know. Your teammate will ask for things during the race. You can completely ignore him. It has no impact on anything whatsoever. You do want to attempt to fulfill your objectives when you can. Now, they're not always fulfillable. This one is really easy to fulfill. The reason we want to fulfill it is it earns us experience points and it earns us favor with our team director. The other thing I'm going to do is hit spacebar real quick. Oh, and here you can see Funte is already telling us, lay down an easy pace at the front of the peloton so we get seen on TV. Okay, we can ignore that. Anything the leader tells us can be ignored. So I'm going to close that. We're going to hit space here real quick. These are some of the options we have during the race. The profile, basically this shows us the profile of the race. You see that down here as well. It shows us the current peloton. Since the race hasn't started, everybody's in the peloton. And it shows us important names that are in the peloton. Of course, there's 72 total people in the peloton, so this isn't terribly helpful just yet. There's a map of the race course. There's riders. This shows us all the teams and the riders that are on the team. Now in cycling, when a race starts, particularly a stage race where there's more than one day, once the roster is set, that's the roster. If somebody falls off and gets injured, can't continue to compete, you just lose a rider. That's all that happens there. The race strategy, this is a rehash of that screen we had at the beginning. Basically shows us exactly the same thing. This is the screen I'll leave this on, and I'll come back to it pretty regularly during the race to see if I'm fulfilling my objective. When you fulfill the objective 100%, you get a certain number of experience points. What you want to try to do when you can is fulfill it by, I believe the number is 125%. So you want to go 25% above what this is asking for. So in this case, that'll be about 19 kilometers. If we can lead for 19 kilometers, and in this 93 kilometer race, that's not going to be hard at all. We will maximize our experience point gain for this race. Even if we come in last place, we're going to get those experience points. Now, coming in a better position, you get more experience points, specifically when you're in the top 10 or 5. And so that's important to consider as well. But at least fulfilling this, we'll get something. Events, this just shows us what's been happening during the game. You can filter on it. It'll talk about lead changes and breakaways, things like that. And then here's the keyboard shortcuts. This is important, but I am going to go over this. You're always welcome to refer to this when you want. I'm going to go over this real quick in game. Okay, lots of talking so far and nothing has been done, and I do realize that. We can click on riders and it'll bounce us to the various riders as we do that. We can also click on any of the riders, well, the ones that aren't grayed out in here, specifically ourselves. As we get more prestige on our team, we'll be able to control the actions of other riders. And again, this is part of the reason to do the pro cyclist mode first, because you start only having to focus on yourself, and then eventually you'll get to control a couple of guys, and then you'll be able to control the whole team. On the career mode, you start controlling the whole team immediately. And if you've never done this, that could be a little intimidating. You'll notice that the other members of my team are highlighted, or their names are listed anyway. They're all from Portugal. That's why they have Portuguese flags. I'm from the US. And rolling over anybody shows you their name and other interesting stuff. We'll talk about some of the functions that you can do on those if you right click, but we're not going to worry about that just yet. I can press on the keypad, I can press 7 and 9 to rotate my view. As you can see, I'm starting at the very back. There's one more of our riders behind me. This is our race day condition, these numbers here. So for us, it's 0. It thought it was going to be -1, but it's turned out it's only 0. It's actually 0, so that's fine. This is our name. The highlight means we're selected. I can't select anyone else right now, and so that's fine. Clicking this, that's our energy gel. We don't want to use that just yet. You want to use that at a critical point in the race when you're expending a lot of burst energy. This will slow down the use of that for a period of time. It's not a very long time. It's measured in seconds, not minutes, but it is very helpful. A couple of other things to look at here. We'll go left to right. This is our current heart rate. In cycling, heart rate is extremely important. It kind of basically measures your energy output in some ways. To save energy, you want your heart rate lower. When you're expending a lot of energy, you will see that this will soar. The way I use it, and I may not be using it right, but the way I use it is to kind of gauge the amount of effort that my rider is doing when I think he's at some sort of nominal level. You know, I expect he's kind of in the medium range. I'm expecting it to be maybe like 130 or so, and if I look up there and it's 170, okay, I know I've got to adjust something because I'm not doing something the way I think I am. This is our water bottles. Right now they're full. That's a full icon. It will basically start to turn dark from top to bottom, and we'll see that a little later in the race. At some point, we may have to go back and get water bottles, or someone else on the team will do that and bring water to us, and that way we don't have to worry about it. This is kind of an indicator of where we are in the current pack. Right now it's indicating we're sort of in the middle. This is our current icon for what kind of action we're taking. Now this will be a real-time race, but basically we have different settings of what we can be doing, and right now it is set to this, which is hold position or maintain position. This is kind of the go easy button is what it really comes down to. The other buttons we can use are effort. This basically is how hard do we want to push. There's relay. You can set to relay, and everybody that's in relay they'll cycle. Somebody will be at the head for 15 seconds, and then he'll fall to the back, and the next guy takes over. You save a ton of energy this way. It allows you to go faster than an individual rider. It's a way to run people down, things like that. So you have to adjust the amount of energy you're expending. And by the way, that's what this number is. This is how hard we're working right now. This can be set anywhere from 0 to 99. It starts at 70, and that's a good baseline to use, particularly when you're first starting to race. So that was relay. Then there's this thing called infinite relay. It's basically the same as relay, sort of. It will try to get the group into a relay, but then your rider or the rider that has this selected is going to try to stay at the head of that line as long as possible. When you would want to do this is when you're able to set up a sprint train. You can chain a bunch of your riders together so that they're nose to tail. And then you can burn through the first guy, use 100% of his energy, and then just discard him. You drop him off, and he burns out. He bonks, is what the cyclists call it, I believe, and he'll fall off to the tail of the race. And then you can basically do the next one, and eventually you peel him off until your lead rider is the one that's left right at the finish line to win. There's other strategies to do there. You can do a relay within your guys. You can do that manually. So that's one of the reasons you might use that infinite relay. Get everybody lined up to relay and then just burn through one of them until he's done. This button is to fetch water bottles. Clicking that, the rider will drop to the back of the pack that they're in. The peloton is usually the largest pack. They'll go to the back, and then they'll bring them to the other riders, so those riders don't have to slow down. So they will slow down at first, and then they will burn a lot of effort to catch back up with the leader to give them water bottles. That's what this will do. If you're in a small group and you're cycling, you're doing the relay, you can do this anytime, and basically you'll just go to the end of the relay, you'll get your water bottle, and then you just fall back into your relay, and that's fine. And then for riders that aren't you, there's this last button. This is auto. You'll notice all these are set to auto right now. If I get to control any of these, I can change any of these values, and that's great. What eventually you'll want to do, though, is reset them to auto so that the AI takes over for them and they can complete the race. You don't have to focus on them. Basically, once you've burned through somebody and you don't expect them to be able to perform, you'll turn that on when you're doing team racing. The one I didn't actually talk about was the first one, attack. You use this to basically try to sprint to break away or to catch up with a breakaway. I think that covers all the main buttons. Let's talk about the keyboard shortcuts real quick. This is actually really simple. Here's what I do when I play. I take my left hand and I put it on the keyboard as though I'm going to be typing. And then I take my right hand and I put it on 4, 5, and 6 on the keypad. And here's what is important on those letters in those areas. These icons right here, this one, this one, this one, these line up with QWERTY. So pressing Q gives you attack. Pressing W gives you maintain. Pressing E is effort. Notice how that lines up. Pressing R is relay, again, lines up. Then T is infinite relay, and Y is water bottles. U is the auto for riders that aren't you. And then I will use this gel. We will demonstrate using the gel later in the race, but you do not want to do it too early, and you only get to do it one time. If you have any skills from your skill tree that are executable, they will show up right above this list, and you have to click on those. I don't believe there's a shortcut to execute those, so you'll click those. Then with my right hand, first of all, 4 and 6 allow you to steer the bike. I don't see a huge reason to steer the bike except when it has to do with wind. If you're going into the wind, you want to be behind somebody, and you might want to steer to get behind them. Crosswinds, you might want to be on the downwind side of somebody so it doesn't affect you quite so much. There's a few other settings over here we can use with other riders to affect the wind as well. By the way, to turn on the windsock, you press O, and it toggles it on and off. I had pressed P to pause the game initially. You can also pause it by using, you'll notice the the time up here. So we can go at pause time, then 1 times, 2 times, 4 times, 8 times. That's the plus and minus on the keypad. Plus increases it, minus decreases it, all the way down to pause. So when I have my hands resting on the 4, 5, 6, I can use my finger to hit the plus to speed up or the minus to slow down. And then the real important one is the 8 and the 5. And what 8 and 5 do, if you look right here, this is the effort that we're putting out right now. There's a slider here. We can use our mouse to set it. But what I do that's a little easier is 8 pushes it up and 5 drops it down. And you can see the whole range there if you want. It goes all the way down to 0 and all the way up to 99. When you're burning at 99, you're going to use your energy a lot faster. Okay, a couple more things and then we'll actually start the race. So if we look at these bars, we have a yellow bar, a red bar, and a green bar. And I'm basically going to read these directly from the user's guide. The yellow bar is your energy for high effort. It is limited by a blue background, which we do not see right now because the bar is completely full. And that is set by the amount of effort that is made during the race. The yellow bar fills when effort is lower, but it can never fill beyond the blue background. Okay, and as the race goes on, you'll kind of see what that's talking about. I'm a little colorblind. I don't see the bar as blue. I see it as kind of just a dark color. And then it'll eventually turn black out on the right, and that'll eat down, and that basically becomes your maximum bar. So as the race goes on, the color will drain out of this, and it'll come back sometimes. But then also the underlying color will disappear entirely, and then that becomes your new max. The red bar is your attack and sprint bar. It decreases during an attack and during highly sustained effort. So like pushing hard up a hill is going to eat up that bar, and it will drop down. It basically works the same way. It'll go down and it will refill over time, much slower than the yellow bar in my opinion, but it's something to pay attention to. And then you have the green bar at the bottom. The green bar is the stamina bar. It will empty during the race, kind of does so slowly, but as effort is applied. If you use no effort at all during the whole race, this will barely go down at all. If you're using quite a bit of effort, it will start to eat down. Here's what's interesting. This bar will never regain. It only goes down, so that's one thing to know. And then there's a point on the bar, and I think it's at about 66%, so about 2/3 of the length of the bar. Once it hits that, that's when these will start to deteriorate. So I think these stay pretty consistent until then, and then they can start to fall off. And then once you're below a certain limit here, and I'm not quite sure how this works, but at some limit is when these will start to drain or drop faster. The underlying colors will drop a little faster, and we'll see that later in the race, probably way out here. Incidentally, for the cyanide race, this is the first time I've seen a relatively flat race like this. This one's almost completely flat, really, if you look at this. This is a circuit, so we're going to basically repeat the same hills over and over. You will notice that, and in fact, in some of these, probably not this one, it's long enough and doesn't have too many iterations. Let's go ahead and start this race. In order to start it, I am just going to hit plus, and I had paused this a little late, so the race had already actually started. You'll notice they're going to be moving immediately. Here we go. And there they go. Now I want to click on my guy. Right now it looks like I might be on Gonzalez. Yeah, I'm going to click on my guy, and I can use 4 and 6 to move back and forth here, as you can see. It's not terribly important right now. And I can up my effort. Now usually what I'll do at this point in a race is I'll hit R for relay. And what that's going to do is I'm typically going to move towards the front, and I'm going to try to join anybody that is willing to relay to pull. Now, as mentioned, my objective, I usually leave this right here, is to work at the head of the group with at least one teammate in the group. So I can do that from the peloton. And in fact, now this guy's messing it up right now, but he's going to try to catch them, so he's going to pop out of here. Yeah, let's go ahead and pause it right here. Real quick, let's look at a couple of screens here. So we have, our peloton has 64 people in it, and we're 48 seconds behind the leader. If we look down here, we only see E2 and E3. There's an E1 up here, and that's the leader. I don't know how many people are in that group, but I can come over here and I think I look at riders. One of these shows it to me. There we go. So E1 has 3 people in it, and these are the 3 people. E2 has 4, E3 has 1, and then there's the peloton. Okay, and these are the gaps from each group. So from us to the guy in front of us is 12 seconds. From him to the folks in front of him, 26 seconds, and then 10 seconds there. As the race goes on, those numbers obviously will change. We also see a representation of this here. Now, normally it keeps the peloton in the middle and it won't shift it left, but if people fall off the back, you'll start to see A groups, A1, A2, A3, show up back here. This guy has moved away from us, he's E3. We would be able to see that on that other screen. So right now we're at the head of the peloton, and that is what our strategy is talking about. So if I go ahead and continue, what we should see in just a few seconds is this should tick up to 1. As long as I'm actually, there it goes. So it ticked up to 1. I can just maintain this until that gets to 15. And again, we can completely ignore this, but I will show you what he's talking about here in just a minute. I can leave this and just let it keep ticking up. It's at 2. It's going to hit 3 now until it gets to 15 plus the 4 or the 25% over. So once it gets to 19, there's nothing more I can do with that to benefit myself. And at that point in the race, I can do whatever I want. Generally, I'm going to try to have a good finish because that's always beneficial. Oh, and there was a fall. Some bikes went down. Sometimes you can see them, not always, and every once in a while, you're the one that falls. So that's something to keep in mind. So now you may notice I'm in relay, but we're not actually relaying. I don't think the peloton relays. I haven't seen where that actually happens. But what you can do to prevent from burning yourself out. So you'll notice here's that color change I talked about. This is our energy bar, and if we hold our mouse there, what we should see is over time that's going to tick down just a little bit. Going to get rid of that. As you can see, it's starting to slide to the left a little bit. So I don't want to deplete that exactly. So what I'm going to do is hit W, which is the maintain position, and what you'll see is he's going to sit up a little bit, and he's going to let other guys pass for now. He's going to let somebody else take over, and then again, if I kind of hold my mouse right here, we should see that bar is going to be moving up. I'm going to speed up the time compression to 2 times, and we can really see that starting to move a little bit. And I'm falling back. Now, of course, I'm not at the lead right now. I'm going to go ahead and pause it. So my counter stopped counting up, although we had gotten to 11. So when I hit R and jump back to doing 75% in a relay, I could also do effort. I think that would do the same thing, but we'll hit relay for now. We should kind of jump back to the front unless somebody's trying to pull harder than that right now. So the amount of effort is factored in, and we'll show about exposure to the wind here in a second. The amount of effort, the way I think this probably works, I have no proof of this whatsoever, but this is kind of a factor of what the number that's in use right now is reflecting. Currently our grade is minus 1%, so we're going downhill at a 1% grade. That puts us in flat. Flat is anything from -3 to +3. So we look at our flat value. I'm a 57. So if the guys around me are all 57s, then effort is going to determine who's going fastest. If we're not all 57s, this value is going to have some function in who's moving faster than whom. And I think the amount of effort I put into it is probably essentially proportional. The value that's ultimately calculated is probably proportional to this percentage by this at some level. That's a lot to digest. Let's go ahead and just let the ride go for now. Now you saw him shake his elbow. When you're in a breakaway group and they do that, that's their indication that they want somebody else to lead for a while. So that's just one indicator of what's going on there. And now they're kind of pulling away a little bit. And this episode's going a little long, so we're going to end it right here, and we will have the rest of the race in the next episode. Thank you for your time, and until next time, fair travels.